I was muted. All right. Okay. So we're getting at that 9 o'clock time. We'll just start over here. We're at that 9 o'clock time. We'll just let people come in as they come in. But good morning, everyone. We are happy you could join us for our May Brunch and Learn. Today we have Richard Hoberg and Dr. Jared Schlenker with us from UND presenting on teacher recruitment and retention curriculum in North Dakota. Richard is originally from Bismarck and is a graduate of Jamestown College, now UJ. Following a master's in English education at Colorado State, he was a high school English teacher for 9 years, including at North High in Fargo, until 2022. Richard is now a PhD student at the Education Foundations and Research Program at UND, where he also works as a graduate assistant in initiatives related to rural education and teacher recruitment and retention. Together with Jared and Monty Gockler, who some of you may know as a Grand Forks School Board member, he is developing the Why Teach North Dakota project under discussion today. Dr. Jared Schlenker has 19 years of experience in the field of K-12 education in the state of North Dakota. He began his career as a secondary language arts teacher in 1989 and transitioned to the role of school administrator in 2007 when he became a secondary school principal. While working as principal for 10 years in 2 different districts, Dr. Schlenker also held the role of curriculum director, transportation director, athletic coach, and state accreditation team member. Wow. In his 6th year as an assistant professor at the University of North Dakota, Dr. Schlenker is an instructor of leadership, finance, and communication courses for graduate students and also serves as the state of North Dakota's Center of Educational Leadership Board as a higher education representative. In addition, Dr. Schlenker is the interim associate dean of the College of Education and Human Development. As usual, today we're going to be just answering the questions kind of throughout, so get them in the Q&A feature and we'll moderate them in, and we'll also get some questions answered at the end here too, so make sure you get those on the Q&A. But otherwise I'll hand it over to Richard and Jared.
Great, thank you so much. It's good to be here, and I can't see any of you, but nice to see you all in that way. As Taylor said, I'm working at UND with Jared and Monty. We have this project in mind that is aimed at helping issues of teacher recruitment in North Dakota. And my background at UND has been working with 2 groups, the Office of Teacher Education, Recruitment and Retention, as well as the Initiative for Rural Education and Economic Development, the IREAD group. And through that, really have kind of come to know more about teaching, recruitment, retention in the state, some of the difficulties that we're facing. So I want to start off, we'll get to the project and what it looks like in a little bit here, but I want to start off with ideas about the nature of the teacher shortage problem and the specific part of it that our project is going to try to address and support. So let's talk about the problem. And I apologize if this isn't news to anyone, but there's been actually a lot of action on the topic of the critical shortage, the ESPB making an announcement, I believe in February, about how all teaching positions in the state have a critical shortage. You can see on the map there that North Dakota is one of a majority of states in the nation that has difficulties with teacher shortage. And I would say, I think our situation and many states in the Midwest as well have a particular issue with rural teacher shortage. That is a element of the challenge that is particularly difficult. So let's just talk through a couple of the ways in which the shortage works, and then how this project is going to be aimed at recruitment specifically, although retention is another thing that people are doing to address the issue. So as I said, the ESPB said we have a critical shortage. This isn't news. I believe prior to the COVID pandemic, we're all aware that understaffing has been somewhat of a problem. And there's been a difficulty fulfilling teacher roles, especially in rural places. I think of this in terms of vacancies, and we have unfilled teaching positions where other teachers and staffs have to stretch to fulfill, but also understaffing if you think about special education as and math and science as well as key areas there. So that is, I think, the extent of the magnitude of the problem as being quite serious. Now, many of you might know the governmental task force, the governor's task force for addressing this issue has started its work. And one of the early things that they've identified already is the concern about teachers leaving the profession. leaving, the basic idea being that teachers are leaving earlier than they used to for either other careers or retirement. I'm going to give a few statistics that are sort of informal, and don't quote me on them, but in general, you might think about how teacher preparation programs in the state train about roughly half of the necessary teachers to fulfill the spots left by teachers leaving the profession every year. It's about 7 or 8%. Again, don't quote me on the numbers, but of uh, teacher preparation programs train that many, and about 7 to 8% either leave the profession for other jobs or retire. Now, of course, dealing with recruitment has more going for it than just hiring teachers from North Dakota teacher education and preparation programs. So that those numbers might sound alarming. We're losing a major proportion of our workforce every year. I don't think that's quite right. We have a lot of strategies that are going on, as I'm sure many of you know, to try to address issues of shortage. I've put some of them here, kind of distinguishing two different areas, recruitment, retention, two different ways of approaching the issue of shortage, with different strategies behind them. We're going to focus on recruitment, and the project that Jared, Monty, and I have been working on is a really quite specific angle at trying to support recruitment in a way that other efforts and ours is kind of a unique. I think other efforts that have been going on and that are sort of nationally pursued as well are also important. Just to kind of briefly note some of them, we'll be focusing on recruitment to teacher education, teacher preparation programs, but in the recruitment arena, Grow Your Own has been something that our state has tried out. The junior educator training program as well, the JET program, is something I know that is going on in Grand Forks and several other places. And then you think of sort of typical other recruitment strategies for out-of-state hiring. I myself, I taught at North High for 6 years, but before that, I was at Colorado, in Loveland, Colorado, and I was an out-of-state hire. I got hired from, and I felt attracted to, and North Dakota from Colorado. I felt like North Dakota had a sort of, well, I wanted to move back home, so to speak, but it also felt like it was a high quality move, an advantage to come back to North Dakota teaching. Now, is that because North Dakota offers a highly attractive teaching package to all incoming teachers? Maybe. Is it because Colorado has some deep difficulties with teacher recruitment and retention? Possibly. But out-of-state hiring is a strategy that gets used. And interestingly, I'm working on a separate project that's about international hiring. And if you haven't heard, that is growing quite substantially. A lot of international hiring, I believe, the rate of international hiring has grown significantly in the last couple of years. Of course,
Richard,
yes.
sorry, just real quick, is that part of the J1 programs, like those
Yes.
kinds of visa programs? Okay.
J1 and then H1B was pioneered by Grand Forks as well, but largely J1 programs to
Mhm.
hire international teachers, which there's been a fair amount of public reporting on that, has been fairly successful. I would say, though, and to the last point about the general topic, some recent research from NDSU came out about the general topic of improving pay, improving benefits packages for teachers, making it more attractive from that end. That's always been a big element. I think a lot of these strategies that I mentioned, and including ours, is trying to do as much as we can with building interest and developing teachers that don't necessarily require substantial more investment. Although I think as all of us talk about issues like this, it's important to keep in mind that further larger investment in education is something that would, of course, move the needle in a general sense. So. Yeah, but our project is, I think, definitely more on the efficiency end. How can we get a lot more students interested in teacher preparation programs? How can we recruit to teacher preparation programs? That's the big idea. I won't talk too much about retention there, though there's a lot, of things being considered and elements going on with those elements that you are likely aware of. Should pause for another question, perhaps. Other things cropping up.
I don't see any at the moment, but this would be a good time for anyone who maybe do have those questions to pop them in there real quick.
All right, well, I'll move on. So I think the general question we could ask about all the recruitment efforts that are going on is, and I should mention that while there's potential success with a lot of these, a fair amount of them are local. Okay, I see someone raised their hand, so I'll pause. But a local, they require sustained time, sustained resources, and what we as a group are kind of looking for is a way of reaching out to students who weren't already, like with the Grow Your Own programs, they were already interested in teaching pathways. So how can we reach students who weren't already interested in becoming teachers? That was kind of a question that we were dealing with as we came up with this project. Question?
Yeah, we had someone raise their hand here. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature. Otherwise,
We'll,
maybe even the chat too.
okay,
But I'll let you know if it pops in there.
sounds good.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah. So will the expanding efforts of teacher recruitment be enough? I don't want to be pessimistic, but I would say given the critical shortage and the fact that a lot of efforts, including Grow Your Own, international hiring, out of state hiring, have been going on, I think it's fair to say that further efforts need to be made to attract students, especially students who hadn't already aimed at teaching, to teacher preparation programs, to share with them the value of and the benefits that teachers see in the job, and to communicate a positive, constructive message about teaching careers, education careers in general, maybe specifically for careers, teaching careers that we have a specific shortage in. I'm thinking of special education and math and sciences. So we were dealing with the question of what would generate increased interest in teaching, and where can we find an audience of students that would find that interest or sort of be reachable in that way. We started by looking at kind of what's going on with CTE, Career and Technical Education in North Dakota. And we also looked at the Choice Ready and kind of cast a wide net about where can we reach students when it comes to trying to influence them to consider teaching, consider teacher preparation programs. And we thought about Choice Ready, which is an initiative I know many schools are doing. Sat down with the director of Choice Ready, and while this is definitely a place where, for example, in Choice Ready, you may want to, or students benefit from doing an online module course, which is what our project basically is. That the workforce elements there oftentimes are sort of substantially set within the school. We didn't want our project to be sort of another opportunity on a long list of optional things that students are doing. We wanted to see if we could get it more directly in front of students. So Choice Ready, definitely some connections and possibilities there. We were thinking, for example, like if a school counselor had this online course we're developing on their list, and they have a student who maybe has interest or personality that might fit with teaching, they could put that in front of their student. But we thought, how can we kind of be a little bit more reaching and try to get this in front of more students? And also, a lot of development's been going on with career and technical education. I'm sure all of you know about the centers, the major investment in CTE centers that is going on in the state. Those are going to reach a lot of students. Of course, there's a lot of rural students who won't necessarily have access to those. But I think it's important, and I could be wrong about this, but it's important to keep in mind that those aren't necessarily aimed at education careers. We have a larger issue in the state about career orientation for students and career preparation, but that doesn't necessarily, and I think perhaps in most cases, overlooks education careers. And if you think about it for a second, it's interesting that the career space, the students are already in the career space. That's kind of one of the nice things about the Grow Your Own programs, is that you can give students some career training and they're in the school where the career happens. So that's something that it kind of makes sense that the CTE centers wouldn't necessarily have an educational career space, but nevertheless, there appears to be somewhat of a gap between those types of Grow Your Own programs and getting a lot of students, perhaps a lot more students, to have familiarity or access to what education careers are. So of course that lands us with the FACS classes. FACS, it turns out, as some of you perhaps know, the FACS curriculum is the space where education careers are overtly taught to students. It's part of their curriculum. It's the space where they do a combination, it's a career and technical education segment. It's in that umbrella. And FACS classes are a space where learning about education careers is happening. So we thought, can we support the FACS curriculum and sort of kill multiple birds with one stone? Do have a project or opportunity for students to more strongly consider teaching careers and perhaps enrolling in a teacher preparation program, and also do that alongside supporting actual FACS curriculum, the types of things that FACS teachers care directly about putting into their classrooms. So that's kind of the emergence of the rationale for this project. Can I pause? Is there perhaps a question? I think I see a Q&A.
Yes,
Yep.
there is.
Yeah.
Yes, Jared, go ahead.
Yeah, with a Q&A question, if you see it, Richard, what is the state doing to invest in AI augmented teaching to reduce administrative burden, support stressed budgets? There's a great potential to work with North Dakota startups to create an augmented experience, always with a teacher in the loop. And I'll let Richard respond to this as well. But what I was thinking with this one is I agree wholeheartedly. This is essentially where we're going. But I don't think we know enough yet to really address that as a small group here within our team. And what you'll hear throughout the rest of the presentation is Richard talking about garnering interest of our young students. So we can talk about, or we can provide lessons for students to understand the benefits and really the excitement of going into that teaching profession. So I think on that ground level at the current moment, or where we are in just being able to attack the teacher recruitment piece, I think this is something that we can do and do now, knowing that within the next, I can't give it early a timeline when that happens, but it's definitely something that we as UND professors, instructors need to be aware of coming to.
Yeah. And looking at what Beth says as well, I think, and it goes together. I think we want any AI or sort of virtual reality, online based stuff to be supplemental and woven in with interpersonal experiences. I think, our course, for example, or the modules we're developing is about how interpersonal skills are a big part of teaching. And it's slightly ironically, they're learning about that through an autonomous virtual curriculum, right? So I think this stuff works best as a supplement or as hand in hand. Our stuff is designed to work within a FACS classroom, like in the flow of their curriculum, and to be expanded on and dealt with in that context, although it works by itself as well. And so, and similarly with the Grow Your Own programs, I just want to say that those are great efforts. They are, time and a bit resource intensive. They tend to be managed locally, but I think it would be great if we could have a program that, say, develops interest for teaching within a student at say, a rural high school, and then that plugs them into a Grow Your Own program, or it sends them directly into applying for a teacher preparation, college major. So yeah, those things I definitely should fit together. I like the potential of AI, but I think we have real concerns to deal with about does it provide all the elements we want in an educational experience that maybe the human element needs to be there too. So okay, so just wrapping up the FACS stuff. There's actually a lot of courses, and the main ones, I believe, the most popular ones across the state are related to child development and early childhood care. That's where the courses that also have education careers as part of them tend to have the most enrollment. So if you see at the bottom of the list there are FACS courses in educational methodology and teaching profession. Our module that we'll take a look at in a second here. It will support those classes, but it's not just designed for advancing, again, students who are already interested in educational methods. It's for students who hadn't thought about teaching yet. And in that sense, we're aiming at the child development, early childhood care, the broader, casting a wider net really for every FACS student who is in a class where there is some standards overlap with educational career training. So if that makes sense, we are the sort of widest net that we can cast with this program. Yeah. So I think that covers the details. There's a lot of ins and outs for people who are FACS oriented. I do want to, I guess, reinforce that our hope, and we're going to ask to partner with the Department of Public Instruction as well. Our hope for giving this message to you is that the course we're developing can be distributed to these classes, and that's going to take a certain amount of cooperation and partnership to get this online module in the hands of FACS teachers and eventually to FACS students. So that's sort of the overarching strategy that we have. All right, let's see here. Can I advance my slide? Okay, so let's get to the, I've been talking a big game about, recruitment and how our project is aimed at supporting it. What is Why Teach North Dakota? Well, in short, it's an online module. You might think of it as a sort of a mini course. If you're familiar with Khan Academy or Coursera, one of our earlier ideas actually was to model some of our course on some of this module, rather. I keep saying course, but for clarity purposes, think of it as a module, a set of lessons. We based early on around a Coursera course that was put out by Yale University. It was The Psychology of Happiness. If any of you have heard of that, I think it made some big waves in the virtual curriculum world. But the idea here is that we'll have an online, easily accessible set of lessons, a module, and that will support directly the FACS curriculum, but also be autonomously available for anyone who wants or is interested in career training, educator career training. So FACS curriculum relevant, directly plugs into a FACS class, and any student, including, say, a college student who's changing majors, or even we've had some of our supporters think, well, could I use this in a intro to teaching class in college? I think it wouldn't hurt. Can it work across these audiences and provide them with an online accessible experience that shows them what teaching's about and has them interact with the job and explore the career in some detail and some depth? So that's the basic idea. It's an online module that informs and promotes teaching professions. I'll talk a little bit about, we want to promote teaching professions. Our goal is to be positive, but also realistic about the challenges of teaching. It's not going to be a rose-tinted curriculum, but it is going to be promotional for teaching careers, of course. That's sort of the main idea. So the main goals there, clearly and positively inform the user about the range of teaching professions, why they should become teachers. Thus, we have Why Teach North Dakota. And two, to set out a clear path for beginning teacher preparation majors in North Dakota colleges and universities. And I'll stop on that point. This is produced by UND, but it is aimed at promoting teacher preparation across the state. I'll say more about that later, but we really want to encourage preparation across North Dakota colleges and universities. So yeah, well, we'll get into some of the specifics. Should I pause for a minute? I guess I don't see any further questions. Anyone jump in? Okay. So I'm going to walk you through or show you a little bit about the module itself and some of the topics that it deals with. As I mentioned, the primary audience of this module is high school students, FACS students. The idea would be that the teacher, FACS teacher, has access to the link and plans to use this as a portion of their curriculum to support education careers, and then would share that link with students, and they would be able to sort of get in, do a very they could just peruse it. You can use, everyone will be able to access the course and use it for their own purposes freely, but also they could register and complete the entire course and receive a participation certificate at the end. So the primary audience there is the FACS students, North Dakota high school students across the state. As I mentioned, the other high school or college students who are interested in teaching careers, counselors who want to give students a virtual teaching career, sort of virtual job shadow would be an audience as well. It's designed for teenagers. We're aiming at really anyone between 9th grade and sophomore year of college. So it's sort of casting a wide net in that way. And as you can kind of see with the access, we're using a development tool that allows them to access this as a website, through a web browser, but it also works on tablet and phone and really kind of multimedia access, which I think is a nice perk. I have a friend at Colorado State who develops web content for their university, and I haven't observed this personally, but apparently it's quite popular to use to progress virtual content on your phone, and this works in that way. So it's sort of all designed to work across different smart devices, and the only thing that you need is an internet connection and a device of some kind to get on and to use the course. So we're hoping to have a very open, very broadly accessible. We don't have anyone, I can't think of anyone who we wouldn't want to have access to the course. And so we want to keep it open access in that way. I'll just briefly mention for any possible concerns that people might have about student data and privacy, we're also going to try to keep this as a free access and as a very low bar of entry. So I mentioned that students may need to register. Really, we want anyone to be able to peruse the course, and students who are taking it or want to sort of have return visits and work on it over a series of days can register for the course, and that will be basically the only data point that we collect. We'd like to be able to reach out to students who have completed the course and try to plug them into next steps, or reach out about next steps in the teacher preparation program. But in general, we'll ask for teachers and students to supply an email address if they want to complete the course in its entirety and receive some of the follow-up things, including the certificate that we have planned. But that's sort of the general pathway there. I'll say that we have talked about, and a lot of people have asked, will this be a 4-credit course? No, it's not intended in that way. Think of it more along the lines of a job shadow or of a training module. And that's one of the reasons why we think of it as a sort of module, a set of lessons, but not a 4-credit thing. And as I'll talk a little bit about the extent of the course later, it's about 4 hours of activity, 4 full hours of learning. And that wouldn't be substantial. I mean, we consider that to be quite substantial and cover the FACS standards quite well, but it wouldn't be substantial enough for a full course credit, I think. So, Jared, do you want to hop in on that at all? Did I?
No, you covered it very well. What I was thinking too with the not necessarily tied to credit. De facto it is if they're taking the module within a FACS course. So it might be a week's worth of a lesson that you can have in a FACS class that ultimately would lead to that FACS credit. But we've talked about a few different options on how to acknowledge that the student had passed the module. So we thought about maybe digital badges, maybe a certification through UND. I think we're going to start with that letter of acknowledgement of completion of the course that would come from UND, kind of doing a test run with that, possibly going into more of the formal certification, more of the formal digital badge. But we'll work on things like that. But as long as we can have some connection to the student, letting them know that they have completed the course is what we're starting with.
All right, well, we're going to do a little demo here. I thought it might be cool to go into the tool itself and sort of walk through a little bit of how it looks. In general, sort of overview, it's 8 topic areas that we've identified that we think would be interesting and also important for understanding teaching careers. Trying to get quite a bit beyond, and really the FACS curriculum asks us to go quite a bit beyond things like, well, what's the average salary, or how many frankly, students know a lot of the basics about teaching, or at least think they do, and try to get into some of the depths. How does it feel? What is the skill set, and what's it take to become a teacher? Those types of things. So we've identified 8 topics. All of them are presented in a sort of interactive module sequence. And so you can see the topics listed there. I'll just run down real quick. We'll orient the student users to the module. Also, of course, the teachers will be using this side by side with the students. We'll be dealing with some misconceptions about teaching. We want to sort of face head on the fact that some people have negative notions and sort of reframe some of the misconceptions in a more constructive light. We'll talk about what does good teaching look like, what the qualities of a good teacher, a day in the life of a teacher, looking behind the curtain a little bit from what students see in the classroom to sort of the real sort of day-to-day activities. We'll talk about the benefits and challenges of teaching, including exploring, pay and benefits as well as intangible benefits. And then they'll have a chance to choose a pathway where they focus on early childhood education, elementary or secondary education, middle school, high school, or special education. We're working in special education as much as we can to try to promote that as well. But generally that there's these pathways of preparation and sort of instilling that in the user. And then we'll finish off the module with information and walkthroughs about training and the degrees required, what your future would look like, the college pathway and other sorts of requirements that are needed to become a classroom teacher and to be an education professional in general. So that's the general modules. I'm going to exit out of the slides for a second and we'll go. Can everyone, is that looking good? Okay, so this is the Why Teach North Dakota interface. It's through a program called Articulate, which is a pretty nifty, pretty visually appealing web browser based curricular program. Articulate Rise. So I'm going to start the course here, and you can kind of see we have the topics on the left where you can navigate through the different segments, the 8 topics I just spoke about. And then the center screen here, let's switch over to tablet mode. You can kind of get a little bit of a view how that would look. And it's vertical scrolling through a sequence of activities. And they really are activities, as far as autonomous systems go, and probably a lot of the trainings that many of us, I'm sure, have attended, virtual trainings where oftentimes the video, it's text, it's visual text that you read, and maybe a question or two at the end to kind of check for understanding. This interface goes quite a bit beyond that. I'll talk about the scenarios, for example, and it gets pretty interactive. But here you can see kind of scrolling through, this is all part of the first lesson sequence, the introductory topic, and allows you to do stuff, read, click on things. And I'll give you a bit more of the logic of this in a second, but just kind of take it in visually. The video segments here. So yeah, that's the tablet mode. Let's look at it. If that was hard to see, perhaps let's look at it more. I don't know, for all of us older folks, doing it on a phone is possible. I don't know why you'd want to, be for me personally, but apparently some students prefer that. Okay, so the basic idea behind this is that they will navigate through, and we have it in mind to guide them through the course. You can see this sort of, pardon me if the volume goes loud here.
This course is your course guide.
So I'll just mute that, but there'll be a course guide that talks them through each segment, prepares them for what they're supposed to do. We want students to have a high level of engagement, and that means sort of being really clear and obvious about what they're supposed to do next, and also trying to prevent people from sort of clicking through. One of the elements of this is that students will be asked to complete each segment. So of course, anyone who comes in to peruse the course or just, dabble with it can do whatever they want. But if they want to progress through each of the topics and complete the entire module, they'll have to complete each segment, basically. So this one, for example, asks you to click 2 boxes to tell us a little bit about yourself. A bit of the privacy point there. This is an autonomously running course. We don't collect data from the student responses. They won't you got 5 wrong out of 10, you get an F, nothing like that. It's just for purposes of interactivity and to help promote thinking in the students. Similarly, let's see here. I'll scroll down to a scenario. Okay, so this is an interactive interface where students participate in a little conversation. Okay, it's a verbal, well, it's written, but you read the dialogue bubbles with this virtual person. It's kind of all set in a school setting, and they will ask you to engage with different dialogue choices about this, in this case, the topics of what makes a good teacher. And we can do quite a lot here to develop thoughtful lots of different types of responses. So the student can really pick something. Oh, neither of these is really what I have in mind. Let's see if I can think of something else. Okay, like what? Maybe these options. Okay, there's 3 more options, and they really have somewhat of a sophisticated pathway through this dialogue situation. So, and there's lots of pathways to the end of the dialogue, but to complete the topic, you'd have to work through to the end of the module. So you can continue here and see what they have to say. We're still in development. I'll mention that. I don't know if this looks more or less polished to you. We have work to do to really make the user experience, to kind of beta test, put it in front of students, see what they say, and make it accessible. And accessible is really the word I would choose for that, because we want students to engage with it. We don't want them to be sort of turned off by certain things that they might expect from a course like this. So that's the design idea. Here's one where you're supposed to use the content that you got from the scenario to put these cards in the right category. Oh, I already got 2 right. Okay, I got one wrong there. What about this one? Okay, yeah. So that's kind of the sample of the interactive elements, and the little quizzes that you can take. I've done these a few times by now, so I got one wrong. Okay. So that sort of gives you a sample of how that works. If you've done Khan Academy or Coursera, it's similar to that. Although I will say that we have some design elements that make it, I think, visually appealing, and the pace is going to move pretty quick. Each of these topical segments, I'll go to the second topic, is designed to be about 20 to 30 minutes for students. So they're kind of not a mini lesson, but also not so extensive that it kind of never ends, if you put it that way. So here's the next topic. You can see there's some other, another course guide video. It's sort of a placeholder at the moment. A slideshow here where you can listen to some audio or read, and there's a bit of imagery to go with it. This is about misconceptions of teacher pay and benefits. So trying to frame that in constructive terms. Here's another scenario, and it proceeds on from there. Lots of different ways of interacting with the content. So I don't know if that's enough of a view, but did anyone with questions, perhaps while I've got this pulled up, about the interface, or perhaps the way in which the content comes across? There's video as well, I guess I mentioned that. Thoughts on that? Okay. Yeah. All right, well, we'll wrap this up, I guess. The way I wanted to finish off the talk is with the element that our partners in the state bring to the table, and kind of what people get out of this. As you can kind of estimate, perhaps spending about 4 hours, or a segment of eight 20 to 30 minute lessons, more or less, is the content that the module offers. The content is based on those topics I mentioned, and tries to really give a diverse and deep view with some of the best. Oh, I forgot to mention, a portion of our content will be interview content. We're going to do some video production that interviews teachers from across the state about values and perceptions and promotional ideas for teaching. Why should students be interested in that? And we're going to weave in North Dakota educators into the content itself, and that's, I think, a really cool element that will personalize it. We're specifically aiming at having some younger teachers talk about how they got into the field, and how their experience has been in their early years, but also some veteran teachers and teachers from diverse backgrounds. And so that's going to be an element of the content. Okay, so I think I've covered most of this. It's like virtual job shadowing. It's got the 8 modules, 4 hours of content. Now, I briefly mentioned the content that you saw on the screen there is going to be expandable. We wanted to be able to work with the FACS curriculum. There'll be sort of direct connections to that. And we'll have a teacher attachment that allows them to have supplementary discussion questions and suggestions for ways of expanding on the course content, really also to guide them through so they can at a glance sort of navigate what it's about, but also to be able to flexibly use each different topic as a sort of modular way of of dealing with that in their class. They could bring in a portion, for example, if they maybe want to skip module topics 7 and 8, they could do that. And also if they want to have interactive discussion, there'll be some suggestions and guidance for that. So we really want to make it convenient and usable. We want the content to help FACS teachers. I've used the word plug and play in the past. It's fully autonomous. A FACS teacher or a substitute teacher even could kind of say like, this is what you're working on. It works on its own, but also it's flexible enough to be usable and relate to other things such as class discussion or expansion on any one of the topics. For example, in the education methodology FACS class, they start with this and then they spend the semester building on it or relating to it. So I'll also just reinforce that there are some pretty clear FACS standards for this, analyzing career paths within education, exploring opportunities for continuing training. If you are unaware, the FACS curriculum, and I'm not an expert about it, but the FACS curriculum is quite robust. It's about interpersonal relationship development. It's about managing people and relationships and families and young people and child development. And so we are hoping that this can stir up and support what's actually a fairly rigorous curriculum in the FACS world, which is great. Students, of course, as Jared mentioned earlier, they get coursework support. This is supporting their completion of their FACS course, and we're planning to offer the certificate of completion. At least for starters, we want there to be some kind of acknowledgement of course completion, something that could go on a college application or indicate that they've done some preparation for being teaching oriented. The colleges and universities, as you can kind of guess, gain the ability to encourage students in the recruitment of teaching professions. Now, UND gets something out of this as well. As I said, this is directed at North Dakota colleges, recruiting for teachers in North Dakota in general. And our examples in the content will be based on North Dakota. How does this work in North Dakota? And UND hopes to kind of promote general recruitment. We're going to use UND as a sort of example case in the course just to kind of familiarize students with how it works. And by the way, at UND, it works exactly this way. So we expect that students may envision themselves in a future teacher preparation course once they finish the module and potentially envision themselves at UND's preparation program. So that's part of it. And as I mentioned, we'll collect emails from students for outreach purposes, for purposes of giving them further information and of giving them their certificate. So that's the idea there. Now, I guess as a last point, we're telling you lovely people about this because we're hoping to get some support, not in the production. We've got production handled. The College of Education and Human Development at UND is fully capable of producing a finished product. We hope to have that done by fall 2024, so this coming fall. And we'd like to partner, or we have a planning meeting with DPI coming up here to get some partnership going for distribution. And also we've considered the regional education associations, school boards, if you're interested or supportive of the idea that we could basically network with state groups such as these to support the distribution of the course, get it in FACS teachers' hands, have it vetted to a certain extent, and supported as a content that matches with our state FACS standards and also is of high value for our students. And so that's sort of our general hope, is that partnering with North Dakota Department of Public Instruction, school boards, regional education, and schools to get this in front of as many students as possible would be a good way of really getting, again, casting that wide net. Lots of students who, especially those who hadn't considered maybe a future profession at all, but who would have the potential to be a good teacher, to consider that. It'll be freely usable, freely accessible. It's all done through College of Education and Human Development at UND with a fairly modest maintenance cost. So that's a nice plus. And we'll be sort of piloting it, I guess you could say, in the fall and trying to get it out in front of people, making some revisions and continuing it into the future. So, and putting lots of spaces before the word possible there, so a little typo. But yeah, that's the general idea. Our production and distribution are on its way, and we hope that you're interested and would support, I guess, our future distribution of the course, the module, distribution of the module. Yeah.
Yeah, I made that mistake too when I was talking.
Yes. So I see a few more things cropping up. See if I can.
Yeah, I think you kind of answered the when will the final product be available. It's kind of an ongoing, product. I don't think development ever really stops, does it? It's, there's always room for revision. But like you said, the pilot will be available this fall, so that's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it'll be functional this fall and ongoing from there. I guess I am seeing this question about counting towards student paraprofessional programs, and maybe Jared would comment on that. But the general idea is that this would be a badge or sort of an achievement that could go on various resumes, but that wouldn't necessarily count toward a specific program unless that program identified and chose on the program side. Basically the same kind of goes for choice ready. If they wanted to say, well, one of the ways of fulfilling a choice ready criteria is this type of module, that's great, they can do that, but we won't do that from our end, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. It's part of another curriculum that wouldn't be tied to anything specific to that, but potentially within choice ready, if it's a listed item is something that would count, but not particularly to the high school student paraprofessional pathway right now. There's another question about, I think it was supposed to say how many school districts have FACS programs, I think is what it was intended with that question. And I think, Richard, I don't know if we got a number on that, but I kind of asked that question right away too. Do you have an idea of like percentages of schools in the state that have a FACS program?
Yeah, the current understanding is that the large majority of districts, especially of secondary schools in the state, have some kind of FACS program. And of that group, I'll back up here to the courses. The child development and early childhood is sort of a common one, or at least an element of FACS. I think oftentimes the topics of FACS get lumped together, I think, or combined into a single course. But our current understanding is that most schools offer FACS, and of those classes, most of those offer at least child development and early childhood care as a component. So in terms of the enrollment numbers, I don't have those offhand, but I would estimate that we are talking about a fairly substantial. I know it's something like 20% of students at the high schools, at least with FACS teachers I spoke to, take one of those FACS classes. So that's actually fairly significant numbers.
And I think I could respond too, as someone that was an English teacher in a school that didn't have FACS. Many of curricular sorts of options were part of an English curriculum, and it could also be brought in for a counseling session if the school has a counselor. But there's other potentials for that. It's the best fit with FACS just because that specific FACS standard that indicates allowing for or promoting that idea of education and careers.
And full disclosure on that, I think I'm not confident about the degree of education careers that ends up, in front of students in your average North Dakota high school FACS classroom. This would try to promote that. I think if, say, typically, and this is, I think, a good estimate, teachers who do the early childhood care and education services class spend about a week on education careers. That's like kind of one of the weeks of the semester. They could maybe buff that up to 2 weeks, so spending a bit more time emphasizing that because they have a more robust curricular support. That I think would be a good, thing.
There's a question about any dual credit options. I don't know if that pertains to this module or not. UND is not really in the dual credit game, but whether or not it could be potentially within a dual credit course is something I suppose it would be up to the instructor of the course.
I think best to think about it as a module that could support a course. That's sort of the perhaps simplest way to answer questions about credit or potential acknowledgement of completion, stuff like that.
And I look at the module as really planting a seed. Yeah, it's something, I have a daughter going into 9th grade next year, and she probably doesn't listen to dad as she might listen more to a teacher or a module. So it's something there for those students that might not have a plan, that they see something within the module that sparks with him. This is something that I love working with kids. I love particular subject area that I want to do something with. So really about planting the seed with our young kids.
Yeah, I think there's a way of approaching this where it's like, oh, I know my next step for signing up for a teacher preparation program. But perhaps a more likely scenario is a 10th, 11th grade student who hadn't really thought about a specific career, hadn't done any job shadowing or sort of concrete thinking. And through a course that they can kind of control the pace of, they can really learn about that and sort of have a indirect but still deep experience with, well, how would that work? And the course, I hope, will be able to provide a fair amount of depth and quality of an answer to that question. And who knows, they might think from that, my first kind of serious thinking about careers was as a teacher. I kind of know how that works. Maybe I'm more open-minded to that future than I would have otherwise been. So.
There's another question, or at least some information in the Q&A as well about CTE courses. And that's one thing that we're planning in August as well. And I can't remember if it was in a slide or not, but we hope to present at the CTE conference in August, as well as the School Boards Association and conference in is it October? So we're looking at having continuation of this dialogue with K-12 schools in the state.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with this educational workplace experience. And one thing I think this course will work with any teacher educational workplace experience course, and in support of that. Although I'd be interested in seeing kind of how that course is designed. Yeah, the one thing I do want everyone to take with on this is the courses like the Introduction to Teaching Educational Methodology that's listed there. They are courses. They tend, and I could be wrong about this, but they tend to sort of have students, they tend to be offered less often and to have students that are interested already signing up for them. So there's that question about how can we reach students who haven't thought about teaching yet that remains an important element. But yeah, it's great to see that there's probably even some expanding opportunities. I know, for example, North High, where I used to teach, is just rolling out Introduction to Teaching, the course, and they expect to have one semester course per year with about 12 students. So that's a nice development on that front. Similarly to the Grow Your Own and JET programs where those are developing. So all of its great efforts. The more recruitment effort, the better, I think, in general. Any final thoughts, questions? We've covered our stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little while for people to type in, so we like to give them that time, but you can always email these guys too. So like I said, we'll be listing their emails on our Brunch and Learn page, as we do always. We'll just kind of hang out for a sec. Anything in the chat? All right. Well, I'm not seeing anything. Anything else, you guys?
I think that's it. That's the idea.
Just thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. No, thank you for being with us. This is fantastic information. I'm very excited to see kind of what continues on with the pilot. And yeah, we'll see what happens this fall. It'll be exciting to hear from you in October to kind of see what has transformed with it until that point. Yeah. All right. Anything else, anyone? Okay, cool. Well, okay. Well, thanks everyone for being on with us. And thank you, Jared and Richard, for being on with us. This has been, like I said, fantastic information. Excited to put this up and have this as a resource on our page. We'll continue to add any of the updated information on our page as well as it comes through. And again, please feel free to contact them with any questions. So yeah, our next Brunch and Learn is June 19th, and our topic is open office hour on post-elections canvassing and annual meetings with our General Counsel, Amy DeCook. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.